Big news yesterday in recruiting, especially here locally, Bill, is that Brian Kelly and Frank Wilson making an in-home visit with Don McKinley, who is another top target here in the state on the defensive line. He's pledged to Texas A&M. We saw Gabe Relaford flip a couple of weeks back. He'll be enrolled here in the next couple of days here at LSU. What's the latest on McKinley, and how did yesterday go?
Yeah, it went really well. That is the thing with the McKinley family is it's kind of been kind of touch and go in terms of the interest that they've kind of showed in LSU. And Shea Dixon, who is working with me on the Bengal Tiger, had a great interview that's going to be up on the site today with Angie McKinley, the mother of Dominic and Darius. And she really said that, for the first time, or not the first time, but for a large portion of their chat, Brian Kelly, Frank Wilson did a great job having the guys feeling comfortable. And maybe it was, that it was casual and in their home and things like that, or just that now kind of the whole process is back open again, and maybe they're rethinking things with the coaching changes in College Station. All of those things may be factoring in, but they had a great time in their in-home visit with Coach Kelly and Coach Wilson, and that's all you can ask for if you're LSU. He's going to take his process to February. He's going to, play things out, see how the coaching situations at multiple schools play out, and then try to make a final decision. So if you're Brian Kelly, if you're Frank Wilson, they did a great job, and it seems like LSU is going to still be in the mix going forward, and you can just hope that LSU gets one of those official visits in January before National Signing Day. And he would be a heck of a land for LSU. Position of need. They have Gabe Relaford, who's a really, really talented and productive player who can start out on kind of a strong side defensive end, maybe grow into a 3-tech. But Dominic McKinley is a true defensive tackle who had to play some nose for Acadiana, had to play out on the edge a little bit at the college level with his size, with his athleticism. He'll take some time to develop. And you would think that he would be able to turn out to be a heck of a football player, and it'd be big for LSU if that was in the state of Louisiana.
Bill, you mentioned it a couple of times there, how big it would be if they could close with both Relaford and McKinley. When you talk about these two prospects, specifically McKinley, break his game down for us a little bit. Who is he?
Yeah, he is somebody that is kind of in that Mason Smith realm where he is so tall, so long, and athletic that I think he's just still developing all of his skill set. And defensive linemen in particular, a lot of people want to hone in on offensive linemen taking a while to develop. And I think defensive linemen get overshadowed by maybe some pass rushing specialists and getting those guys, 15, 20 snaps, maybe a game early on in their career if they're going to be eventually a difference-making defensive lineman. But those defensive tackles, they take time to develop. And with Dominic McKinley, you would hope that he comes into a weight room and puts on 25 pounds at the college level, and he wears 275 pounds really well. Like, he looks like kind of a strong side defensive end, but he really is a true defensive tackle. And for Acadiana, like I said, they moved him all up and down the line. I think teams certainly double-teamed him, sometimes triple-teamed him this year. It's hard to go at the high school level every snap as a defensive lineman and play as hard as you do or should, and especially at the expectation of the Acadiana program. So he had a solid senior year. We actually kind of did a deep dive on him because we were the first to have him as the number one prospect in Louisiana. We moved him all the way up. He was in 5-star range. In one of the latest updates, he kind of trimmed back just a little bit, but one of the big conversations is kind of, is it Gabe Relaford? Is it Trey'Dez Green? Is Dominic McKinley still in the mix for the number one prospect in Louisiana? And our rankings team, and from what we've been able to gather, I'm watching his tape back, he was very good this season at Acadiana and deserves to be well inside the top 100. So, he is a difference maker. When he can get some opportunities to play his true defensive tackle spot, I think he's going to be special.
Bill, I was in the Dome over the weekend. Trey'Dez Green, going to be tough to bump him out of that top spot.
Yeah, 100%.
But as far as the Superdome goes, they had a lot of prospects on hand, a lot of guys making plays. Juwan Johnson was there. Trey'Dez Green was there. Ahmad Bro was there. James Simon was a huge performer for Calvary on Friday. What was your reports of the Dome? What did you hear from some of the guys that were there?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest takeaway was James Simon. I think his whole season, I saw him early on against Westgate. He's just physical. He's the total package. He reminds me of Ty Davis, maybe kind of a little. I mean, he's still a year out from making his final signature for college, but kind of a little trimmer than Ty was coming out of Southern Lab, but can do all of that physicality. Has some speed. Is relentless in terms of his effort to continue to pick up yards. He kind of finds ways to slither out of tackles. I think James Simon is everybody likes to pay attention to Harlem Berry because of the speed and that elite level of production, and rightfully so. I think James Simon is right up there with him, and so I'm expecting him to have another big offseason, another big season, and it wouldn't shock me if he was right up there. Challenging Harlem Berry for the number one spot in the country. And Trey'Dez Green just continues to show all the hard work that he put in, being a transfer going into this year, buying in, putting on weight, and then just being able to dominate with his physicality. So a lot of good takeaways from the Dome, as always, but those were two that stood out to me.
You mentioned Harlem Berry. He's set to announce on Monday. LSU getting good news?
Yeah, LSU sits in a really good spot for Harlem Berry, and we expect the pick to be the Tigers at this point. We'll kind of see what the plan is there for Harlem Berry. There's been some buzz around moving it slightly back, kind of moving it around. He hasn't finalized that, so we haven't really changed the date or done anything like that yet publicly with him. But since you asked, I mean, there is some buzz about him maybe changing his announcement plans and doing it on a bigger stage. So we'll kind of stay tuned. But if he does end up announcing on Monday, then it'll be good news for LSU. And even if he moves his decision date around, we expect it to be good news for LSU for sure.
Terry Bussey is another guy in this cycle that people are looking at. He seems to be kind of going through another evaluation process. Where does LSU stand with Bussey?
Yeah, LSU's right up there for Terry Bussey, and I think he's had a good eye toward LSU, and he's been committed to A&M. He's still committed to A&M, and he's going through the process of meeting who would be his new coaches in College Station. He won a state championship last year, last night, set a couple records in that game as well in Texas. So he did it with an A&M sticker and gloves on. So, I mean, if you're into glove watching and sticker watching, I mean, there you go.
Put some LSU gloves on in there. He popped some.
Oh, did he change them out? Yep. Pre-game they were A&M, so he must have changed them then.
He had the A&M sticker on his helmet.
Quick change at
He's
half,
got the
coach.
pit stop crew. He's got the pit stop crew. But Kerry Cooks was there watching him. A&M was also watching him. So that just shows that LSU isn't going to give up here, and they shouldn't. If they could find a way to get Terry Bussey away from Texas A&M, what a safety haul it would be. I don't know. Haven't looked at the other safety hauls across the country, but if LSU were to get Terry Bussey, I mean that's a trio with Deshaun McBride and Joel Rogers that would have to be right up there with tops in the country. I mean, if you could get a 5-star, if you can get a top 100 player in Deshaun McBride and another top, I think, 250 player in Joel Rogers, I mean, that'd be pretty salty. So LSU is going to keep swinging there. It wouldn't surprise me if he made it back for another visit in January if he does, in fact, take things past the early signing period. But he does have this weekend to make some visits, a visit if he wants to. But it seems like he is, in fact, going to take it to February. So things can always get interesting there.
Bussey put on a show last night, the state title game in Texas. In fact, set a couple of state records as he ran for a 93-yard touchdown and threw for a 97-yard touchdown, both in the first half last night. As he put on a hell of a performance in the state title game for his squad, who won the 2A title last night. All right, for he won Mr. Texas football last year. Xavier Atkins is up for it this year. Atkins spent his first 3 years in Louisiana. Now he's over in a suburb of Houston. Atkins had an incredible final year, right?
Yeah, and he is going to have a chance to cap it off with the first state championship for Humble ISD on Saturday. They played DeSoto in the late game on Saturday at AT&T Stadium in Arlington there. So he's got a big stage. He has a team that has really played some really good physical football this year. I mean, that Summer Creek defense is really, really strong. Xavier's been a guy that we moved up into the on 300 because of his senior year. And that was kind of the question going into his senior year was, all right, he is this raw, productive prospect at Jonesboro Hodge and was just able to kind of dominate, the competition he faced. But he was kind of doing it, see ball, get ball. There wasn't as much technique to it. And he was just physically superior on many levels to a lot of the players he'd play against. Now he goes to Summer Creek in, one of Texas's highest classifications, and he has just been all over the field. I went and saw him this fall. He had a pretty much pick six. They called him down at the half-yard line, but might have gotten in and had a bunch of tackles and is just kind of all over the place and plays with passion, plays with reckless abandon, really just for both opposing players and from his own body. So he is really, really talented. He is a guy that I think we could see maybe move up a little bit more. But what a prestigious honor if he could reel it in. It'll be tough to unseat some of the guys he's up against, but for him to be as a finalist for that award, I think he's the only linebacker. Wouldn't shock me if he's the only defensive player too. That speaks volumes about what he's been able to do this year for Summer Creek.
Bill, another defensive back just jumped in the portal with Louisiana ties. North Louisiana, former Bossier High standout Camron Richardson over at Mississippi State has entered the portal. Is this going to be the same plan for LSU? You think they're going to go after these guys with Louisiana ties that are directly in the portal that feel like they have and play at positions of need?
Yeah, absolutely. And Camron's somebody that back when we were at 24/7, the rankings team recognized how good he was, and I believe they bumped him up to a 4-star right there at the end. And he signed with State. He's been there, and now he's in the portal. And the thing for LSU, though, is they're going to have to work fast. He is a May guy, but I don't know how long he wants this process to go. The early buzz is Oregon and Texas A&M are going to duke this one out, and that's from college coaches kind of around the country that really wanted to get in on Camron Richardson. Because he is, a one-year guy who would be an instant starter for most schools around the country. And so there's a lot of different colleges that are trying to get angles in there, and LSU is one of them. But he entered the portal and flew right to Oregon. So that is something to watch there. We'll see kind of if LSU can get him in before things go dead. And then on top of that, we'll see if he takes it out into the spring and gets recruited in January and February and kind of beyond. So an instant impact player, a one-year guy who a lot of people had as a kind of a top 3 round NFL draft pick. And LSU has to work quickly to get him on campus and hope that he doesn't want to extend this process long and can get him to lock in and come play for the Tigers.
Speaking of wide receiver portal, transfer portal, LSU had a wide receiver on campus, Jamori Macklin from North Texas, earlier this week. What are they looking at as far as experienced wideouts with guys like Neighbors and Thomas most probably on the move?
Yeah, I think one thing they want to do is address the punt return position. And Macklin did commit to Kentucky this week, but it's Xavier Thomas that is really emerging as the top guy for LSU at this point. And he's talented. He's got speed. He's now produced in a bad Mississippi State offense. I think he had 500 yards receiving this year. And so the thought is you get him into LSU's offense and maybe he can be a little bit more productive and more of a difference maker. Last year there was rumors that LSU would go in on Xavier Thomas and instead went with Aaron Anderson. And now a year later, Xavier Thomas in the portal and looking at his options. And it seems like LSU is going to reel him in. There was some buzz around some other schools, but all signs right now, as of this interview do point to LSU getting him on board.
All right, Billy. As the world turns here in recruiting, this is kind of one of these early pushes. Anything expected before next Wednesday? I know next Wednesday is the early signing period. Anything you're watching as far as LSU is concerned, or maybe a potential shakeup?
Honestly, not really. The only things we're watching is, every year there are guys that say, okay, I'm going to take things into February, and then they don't. Are any of the guys LSU's after going to be ones that do that? You've got Dominic McKinley, you've got Terry Bussey. Will they change plans and maybe sign early somewhere? I mean, that's always a possibility. It doesn't seem like they're going to, but it's always something to watch. And then LSU is going to bring in Cohen Eccles, who's a former Texas A&M commit on the offensive line, for an official visit this weekend. We'll see if anything develops from there, but he is going to come in on campus, and he told us that he's excited about it. He's had an eye towards LSU since they offered him, but committed to Texas A&M. That was kind of the school that was way out in front of that one early on. And now with the coaching change, he's reevaluating things, and we'll see. Auburn's also a threat there, but LSU has a really good offensive line class. I don't know if they're going to bring him in and maybe just kind of feel things out as far as what could happen between the two sides, or if it's just going to kind of be a non-story going forward with the early signing period approaching. But those are probably the three guys we're watching at this point down the stretch.
Billy, what'd you make of the news yesterday of the NCAA lifting the ban on multiple transfer guys? How does that affect LSU, obviously, with Jaylen Cook?
Yeah, it is a wild. This whole transfer portal thing and the waivers and this and that are just so wild. I've got a lot of thoughts on the whole situation, but Jaylen Cook is expected to be available on Saturday for LSU per Matt McMahon last night. So that's a good thing. And it is a 14-day window for transfer waivers to be unenforceable with the ruling in the court. So it's a bizarre situation. I don't know what's next with it, but it's just another saga with the NCAA that is just it's just insane how it's gotten to this point.
Last one, Bill. Malik Murphy yesterday entered his name in the portal. Texas's backup quarterback. What do you think the market is for him, and how much is his phone blowing up over the last 10 hours?
Yeah, the market is insane. I mean, most high-level transfer quarterbacks are going to command $1 million, and that's the reality of it. When you have a guy like Malik Murphy, who's now got some tape out there, he's got years left. It's going to be a competitive market. LSU is inquiring about a lot of transfer portal quarterbacks just to maybe address the position. It's got to be the right fit. It's got to be the right guy who wants to come in and come into a position that has Garrett Nussmeier coming back. And that's something that's important. And LSU also doesn't want to disrupt Ricky Collins, and Colin Hurley enrolls in January, and you're right in the thick of the Bryce Underwood sweepstakes. So LSU's in a very particular position with the quarterback transfer market this year, and so they have to find a right fit if they're going to bring a guy in. And I don't think Malik Murphy is going to be that guy. I'd love to be surprised. He'd be a nice addition to the room just from a talent and depth perspective, but they're trying to find a guy, but it's got to be a really specific fit, and it's got to go the right way.
This is the last one, Bill, I promise. Chase Bacentis, offensive lineman, in with LSU late in the process, ended up going to A&M, played a lot for the Aggies here in his first year. He entered the portal last week. LSU, I know, showing interest.
Yeah, they're showing some interest. There is some buzz that he's going to get closer to home now, either Ohio State, Michigan, Syracuse, but I mean, he's another guy that will have a heavy market for. He's got multiple years left. He played a ton for the Aggies this year. He probably played out of position. I think he was their starting right tackle, if I'm remembering correctly. He should be along the interior, in my opinion, at least. So LSU, if they were to address the offensive line, the interior is probably where they'd want to do it. And we'll see if anything comes from that. But the early buzz out of DeSantis's camp is that he might want to get closer to New Jersey, where he's from. But we'll see.
Thank you, Bill. Good to see you. We'll talk again soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
There he is, Billy Embody, checking in from On3 this morning, the latest on what's happening in recruiting.